Hey all, Ron here from Military Images Magazine with a new episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. Today we're going to Nevada Territory on an April day in 1864. The town of Austin, population about 5,000 souls, just elected its first ever mayor. A wager connected to the outcome of the election involving a plain sack of ordinary flour, pictured here, led to an unprecedented fundraiser for Union soldiers and sailors that gained national attention. Now, here's what happened. The two candidates in Austin vied for the office of mayor. The Democratic Party candidate, David E. Buell, went up against Republican candidate Charles Holbrook. Chances being what they were, and with no formal polling available, both sides felt certain of victory. There were two men on opposing sides of the contest who made a bet on the outcome. The Democratic Party supporter was a man named Reuel Colt Gridley. He's pictured here. He was a Missouri transplant who had failed to find a fortune in California, but earned a respectable living in Austin as a partner in a general store. With plenty of miners in town, business prospered. The Republican Party supporter, Dr. Henry Herrick, lived in the nearby community of Clinton, which was in the same county as Austin. That's Lander County. He was an official in Lander County. So the wager went like this. If the Republican candidate won, the loser, Gridley, would march through Austin with a 50-pound sack of flour across his back while a band played John Brown's Body. If the Democrat won, then Dr. Herrick would haul the sack of flour, this time to the tune of Dixie. There are numerous period tellings of the story and what happened next. There are two versions that are favorites of mine. They stand out among all the others. One of them comes from the April 21st, 1864 edition of an Austin newspaper, the Reese River Reveille. The other comes from Carl W. Torrance's 1944 history of masonry in Nevada. Both, and the reason I like them, they're vivid, realistic accounts of what transpired. And together, if you put them together, they tell the larger story of that sanitary sack of flour. So we begin with Torrance's account from the history of masonry in Nevada. He writes, the name, which brought lasting fame and glory to Austin's Masonic lodges, is the name of Reuel Colt Gridley, known best to history for his connection with and interest in the United States Sanitary Commission during the Civil War. For the sick and wounded, there was no Red Cross, no great Army Medical Corps, but the Sanitary Commission was carrying on nobly. Demands on its slender resources had been enormous, had time and again exhausted them. Sufficient money had been brought in to buy supplies. These had been assembled at depots, and the commission found itself without funds to move them up to the places where they soon would be badly needed. This was the national setting. The local setting was furnished by the municipal election in the little town of Austin. The election was hotly contested. In the heat of battle, a wager was made between Dr. Herrick and Reuel Gridley. If the Democrats won, Dr. Herrick was to carry a sack of flour on his back across the town to the settlement of Clifton, a mile and a half down the canyon. If they lost, Gridley was to become the beast of burden. The Democrats were defeated, and in due time, Gridley appeared with the flour decorated in red, white, and blue ribbons and a few small flags. Beside him marched Dr. Herrick, carrying Gridley's hat, coat, gloves, and cane, and followed by 36 men on horseback. You'll find out soon why 36 is a relevant number here, or a particularly important number, along with the band playing Old John Brown. And then came almost the entire population of Austin. Remember, it's 5,000 people. So now, let me pause Torrance's account to share the reporting from the April 21st issue of the Reese River Reveille. While I'm reading, listen for the mention of a sponge and broom. It's the idea of cleaning political house. So here we go. Yesterday morning, the wager was paid in the most splendid style. At 10 o'clock, a large convocation of citizens with the Austin Band, people on horseback, and many flags of all sizes are assembled about the store of Mr. Gridley, who was ready with his sack of flour trimmed with ribbons and mounted with a number of small flags. A procession was formed with the city officers elect mounted on horseback at the head, followed by Dr. Herrick carrying the coat and cane of Mr. Gridley, who was immediately behind with the sack on his shoulder, with his son, a youngster of about 10 years, carrying a small flag, marching beside him, and escorted by the Democratic Central Committee, two carrying flags, one a pole to which was attached a huge sponge, and the other a pole carrying high in the air a new broom. Then came the band, leading an immense procession of citizens, all marching down the street amidst the most enthusiastic cheering of spectators and the screeching whistles of the numerous mills on the route. Upon reaching Clifton, the principals, with the band and as many as could, marched into the Bank Exchange Saloon, where the ceremony of delivering the flour, surrendering the flag, and throwing up the sponge was performed with the most appropriate and graceful speeches by Messrs. Gridley, Markey, Worthington, and Herrick. It is not necessary to say that the spirits of the bar added some, if possible, to the enthusiastic spirits of the attendant crowd. Cheers and three tigers greets the speeches, the throwing up of the sponge, and the surrender of the flags and the broom. A new broom sweeps clean, and the one transferred was new and large. It was typical of the clean sweep the party had made, and also that the course of the new officers of the city would be like the new broom, and that in their course of office they would leave a clean record. Now, let's flip back to Torrance's Masonic history for the rest of the story. An argument arose as to the disposition of the flour. Herrick, Dr. Herrick, proposed that it be made into griddle cakes and swore that no Democrat should have one. Gridley insisted that it be put up at auction, the purchaser to put up the amount in gold and retain possession until the sack was again offered at auction and sold on and on until everyone had a chance to possess it. All proceeds to go to the Sanitary Commission. Gridley was the first purchaser. This brought a round of cheers, and the bidding started in earnest. From the sale, the sum of $5,000 was sent by Gridley to the commission. Another town, Gold Hill in Story County, heard of the auction and asked the residents of that town to be permitted to conduct an auction. So to Gold Hill went Gridley and his sack of flour. The auction was repeated, miner bidding against merchant, banker against doctor. $5,225 was raised, and the supremacy of Gold Hill over Austin publicly admitted. Then the parade filed through Devil's Gate to Silver City, but a rainstorm interfered with the sale, so on they went to Dayton, the county seat. The rivalry between the towns of the Comstock boosted Gridley's sales enormously. At Virginia City, Mr. Bonner of the Gould and Curry Mine started the ball rolling with his bid of $3,500. The sales mounted until that section of Story County raised $22,000. From there, Gridley, with his now famous sack of flour, went to Sacramento, San Francisco, and then to New York and the East. In all, Gridley turned over to the commission over $265,000, a sum which made possible the fine work of the commission in the last year of the war. Gridley, his work completed, returned to the West, broken in health and financially ruined. He had exhausted his means transporting his flour over the country. In 1866, he landed in Stockton without a dollar. He died in Paradise City, Stanislaus County, November 21st, 1870, and was buried in Stockton on Admission Day. A monument to his memory was dedicated in Rural Cemetery by the John Rawlins Post of the Grand Army of the Republic. And so you have the story of the sanitary sack of flour pictured in this photograph. The money Gridley raised went a long way to support U.S. military personnel. A few months later, in October of 1864, Nevada gained admission to the Union as the 36th state. Now you know why there were 36 men on horseback during the big parade in Austin. The statehood process was rushed by the Republican Congress so that Nevada citizens could vote in the presidential election. They did, and overwhelmingly, like Austin, by almost 20 points, to send Abraham Lincoln back to the White House for a second term. I want to thank Jeremy Rowe. He's a friend of mine. He's a contributor to Military Images. He's the one who first made me aware of Gridley's sanitary sack of flour and a story he wrote for the magazine in our autumn 2019 issue. I've posted the link below so you can read it if you're interested. A couple more accounts I want to mention to you. You'll find another one in the 1866 book, History of the United States Sanitary Commission by Charles J. Still. I've included that link. And there's one more, another account, and this one is by Sam Clemens, who we know today and best as Mark Twain, the great American humorist. Sam, then in his late 20s, worked at the Virginia City Territorial Enterprise as a reporter. Twain also happened to grow up near the Gridley family in Hannibal, Missouri, and knew Gridley. Twain's version of the story is told in his 1872 classic Roughing It. So thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail.